Just a quick introduction. My name is Dean Gibson. I am morning France as well, and Mr. Denny. We're going to be chatting about some project engineering. This is the part 3 of this series. Having a lot of fun putting it together, and I hope everybody can hear me and we can get going. All right, guys. So today we're going to be chatting about creating a Smart UI project, which we'll get to in a little bit. But over the course of the last 2 stream sessions that I've done, there's something I've been chatting about. I'd like to just cover it in a bit more detail from a higher level. So what we're going to be chatting about today is how to create a structured project. But to do that, we need to understand something we call a context model. So in Adroit, we use a context model to define our data structure. So if you look on the screen, you'll all see that we've got a hierarchical structure up on the screen. This is an S88/S95 standard. It's a batching standard out of Europe, I believe. And it forms the basis of a sort of a starting point for us on how to structure our projects and our data. Guys, this is just merely a starting point. What I would suggest is that you can add or remove these sort of points within the structure as you go along. This is not a one size fits all. This is more along the lines of something that we can all just sort of use to implement. Basically, the structure goes like this, or the thinking behind it goes: if I have a bit in a field that I'm reading into my SCADA, I need to understand I need to put that into some kind of a context. So the saying goes, information is data in context. So this bit might be the running signal of a VSD piece of equipment. So that already gives us a bit of an idea of what it is. We can then start saying things along the line of, well, this belongs to a specific area of my plant, to a specific type of VSD. And all of these things then fit into a structure, into a hierarchical structure, what we refer to as a one-to-many. So if we look at the graphic on the screen, you'll see at the top there we start off with an enterprise. This is typically the company. A good example of this is I've called this enterprise North Water. So this is a waterworks. This is a municipal company called Northworks. And one of the sites that they have is wastewater. Now, they could also have water treatment plants. They could have booster pumps. They could have, different sites within it. So they could have multiple sites that belong to that enterprise. And then under that sort of site, you then have an area, in this case, a processing plant or a inlet field, if you will. Inlet screens for our wastewater could be one of those areas. Stepping down, then we move on to our process cell or our PLC. This again, you could have multiple PLCs in an area or a single PLC. Again, guys, the structure can be edited as you want. And then obviously from there, we go into, in this case, under our PLC, we have a settling tank. We might have multiple settling tanks in this particular processing plant. So we could have a settling tanks 1 through to whatever. And then again, we have a piece of equipment. So this is a VSD. This might be the pump that moves the material into that particular processing tank. And then we have a running signal. So that bit we can now place in a context within our project. So this hierarchical context, or this context model, as we like to call it, can be used for a couple of things. One of the things that it can be used for is a naming convention within our project, our agent naming convention. So I'm just going to quickly open up a design document here just to show you where I've implemented it. And this will come down to part of the creating the project itself within the Smart UI. So I am leading up to that, guys. But we're just getting there. All right, so where are we? Here we go. All right. So what you're seeing on your screen now is what we refer to as a functional design specification. Again, this document that I've created is actually based on the certification exam. I would encourage everybody to have a look at it. It allows you to certify yourself with Adroit. There are a number of benefits to being certified. One of them is that if Adroit does get a job, we can look at our list of certified engineers, and we can recommend you for the work. All right, so what we're interested in here, I'm just going to quickly zoom across. I'm not going to go through the whole document. Is a naming convention for the tag name. What I've done here is you'll see that I've broken it down, this tag name down, according to the context model that I've provided. The first set of characters being for a site name, the next for an area, equipment name, and equipment signal. Now, why I'm showing you this is that you see that I've deviated from the actual structure within the model itself. So we haven't included all those nodes. So that's just all I really wanted to show you guys. It's just to make sure that you can provide that context. So that would be used. That's one of the examples where we would use that. One of the other examples that we'd use is when we create our graphical project itself within the Smart UI, our Smart UI project itself. I'll quickly just spin up a server here. I should have had this running before starting this. I do apologize, but we'll shouldn't take more than a minute to get it going. So while that's going up there, if there's any questions around this model, please, guys, I encourage you to ask. This model can also be used on your database structure as well. So when logging data, if you can have a structured approach to the way you log your data, you can then go along and say, well, I want to see runtimes for all of my VSDs of a particular model or a particular area of a plant or a particular, whatever the constraint is for that data. All right, so moving on, what we're going to be looking at here is my designer. So the project itself, the project that I'm chatting about today, is a graphical project within the Smart UI Designer. For those of you unfamiliar with the Smart UI Designer itself, this is our interface, our design interface, our design client, if you will, for the Smart User product, as well as very similar to the Maps. For those of you that use the Maps product, the interface is very similar to it. What we're interested in is something referred to as our Enterprise Manager, which you see this is this work area here. And then inside that, the Enterprise Manager is broken down into three parts. We have our data sources. This is where we fetch our information that we're going to be working with. Inside here, you'll see that I've got a couple of them. One of them is a OLADB data source, which connects to a SQL table, which I'm returning data with. I have my agent server data source, referred to commonly, this is the Adroit. By default, it's called the Adroit data source. And then I've got an object model in here, which for those of you that are new to the object model, can be quite useful and quite interesting. I would recommend having a look at it. All right, so that would be the one area that we're working in. The other one is our management. This is where our profiles and security are configured. And then last and not least, and this is where we're going to be spending our time today, is the projects area. This is where we design our graphics, our graphical projects for Smart UI. And we're just going to chat a little bit about how to create this now using that context model that I've defined for this project. I have actually built a graphical project already. As you can see, I've got a graphical project in there called Juice Plant. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But I thought we'd start off by just creating a new one. So the quickest way to do this, the way we start is we obviously have our projects defined already, which I've done using that document that I've shown you, using that context model. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go along and implement that structure now. I'm going to go and create a new project. You'll see that you've got a little new project on your home view up at the top here. I'm going to click on him, and he's going to launch our add a new project. Just a quick note here, guys. Up until now, I've been using version 10.04.1 of our product. We're going to, I've just recently upgraded to 10.05. It's not a released version of the product just yet. It is a release, what we refer to as a release candidate. But as soon as we've gone through our testing, we'll be able to go ahead and start. You guys will be able to go ahead and download it and update your 10.04.1s or 10.04 to the latest 10.05. Okay, so adding a new project, the first thing it's going to prompt us for is a name. The name we're going to use here is, I'm just going to give this a name. I'm going to call this ABC Spice. That is my enterprise's name in this particular problem. Obviously making sure that you spell correctly. You cannot rename these things once you have created them, guys. Once you have created these projects and these data sources, their names do stick. The context within them, the folders and structures can be renamed, but for now, when you create the project, you cannot rename the project without removing it entirely. So just be aware of that. Make sure that your spell checks are on. You don't want to make any spelling mistakes. Inside this project here, you will notice that we have a little checkbox in here, and we can go along and we can actually define default properties for our project itself. Mine is will be a little bit different to yours. Inside here, you will have multiple examples of different navigation types. I have my own navigation style that I like to use. That's a topic we will be covering in my next streaming session. I see that it's not popping up on the screen there. Just a second here. Let me just quickly fix that up. There we go. Let's just add him in there. Sorry about that. Anyway, so here we go. Here's our new project structure. As I said, under your navigation types here. So typically, what you'll find is when you create a new project. Let me just minimize that guy quickly, just so that you see what the default one looks like. What I can do then is if I want to show navigation, project default navigation and styles, I just check on that little checkbox over there, and that then shows me my project navigation, and I can then come along and select a project style. Inside here, I can go along and create default style, or I can select from a predefined list of styles. You'll notice that as I click through here, our styles change. These are back colors, our default text sizes, etc. Guys, you can also go ahead and define your own. First thing I typically do is I will set up my graphic form size. This is very important. The graphic form size within your project style dictates the size of the actual graphics that you create. Nowadays, most people will use full HDMI what's the word, screen resolution, 1920 by 1080. Guys, this is actually quite a large topic to cover, screen resolution and screen size. It is quite important, particularly if you're using vector graphics and those types of things, making sure that the screen sizes that you design on are applicable to your operator's screens that he's going to be using. We do cater for sizable screens as well, but it's nice to engineer for a standard. Okay, so by default, 1920 by 1080, that's our full HDMI. That's the size, the most commonly used size. My back color, I prefer a white back color with a black forecolor, and Arial 10 is my preferred font. Again, guys, this is something that you can entirely create and define on your own, or alternatively, you can just not use these predefined styles, and you can just go ahead and create your own as you go. But it does save a little bit of time when creating new graphics, just to have them preset to your preferred sizes and things. All right, so we've defined our project style. I'm now going to go along and click the finish button there. My enterprise manager will now default. Let me just bring back my designer there. And now you'll see in our enterprise manager, we now have a new blank project called ABC Spice. So before we continue, just a little bit of backstory here. A lot of what I've seen, particularly when I head out to site, when somebody phones me and says, please, we've got a problem on site and we'd like you to come and help, or we have an existing smart UI project or maps project that we'd like you guys to come and have a look at. What I typically find is that guys tend to not have any kind of formal structure within their project, and that's sort of what we're trying to aim at getting at today. So under ABC Spice, I'm now going to go along. I'm going to go and create a folder structure in here. This is so that we can store our graphics and our different components of our graphical project in a way that makes sense, so that when somebody else comes along and needs to add to the project, there is a predefined structure. The things aren't just stored just under one thing, under one sort of name. One of the big problems we found is that guys will just go in and just store everything under the name. Now, I want you to just think about that. Imagine for a second that you just went and stored all of your computer files under one folder structure. So all of your Word documents, all of your Excel documents, photos, everything just went into one folder. It'd be very difficult to find things. So what we've done, what I'd like you guys to think about, is when you create these projects to just have some kind of a formal structure. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm using my context model. I'm now going to go and create the areas of my site. So this is my site, ABC Spice is my site. And I'm now going to go along and I'm now going to go and create a new folder structure in here. So I'm going to create a new folder, the first one. And in this particular case, the first folder I'm going to create is the what they call the first area is called filtration for this particular site. Oops, let's try that again. Filtration. Again, these folders can be renamed just by clicking on them or selecting F2 on your keyboard, and you can't see the menu, but if you were to right click on it, there is a rename option. Filtration. All right, filtration, there we go. Let me just see filtration, yeah. All right, so I can go ahead. I'm going to create another folder as well, and under this folder, I'm going to call this batching. This is the main part of the plant, is the batching plant. And then also we have another folder called bottling. So this is a bottling. think that's how you spell bottling. Let's just check that. Yeah, that looks right. Bottling. Okay. All right, guys. So these would be the areas. What we can do is if you have sub areas within these filtrations, you can then go ahead and call them that. One of the things I like to do under here for each one of these areas is I will go ahead and I will create 3 other different folder structures in here, and they will be called main, wizards, and templates. So that's the folder structure I've now defined. I will then go and create those same folders within the other areas. So the main folder would contain your main overview for that particular area, any kind of graphic form that that sort of pertains to the whole batching area. You can then break that down even further, and then sort of start breaking and then sort of start using those folders there. That keeps it nice and neat. Make sure that everybody knows where the graphics are, where they go, where they belong to. One of the things under wizards I like to do is I like to create a folder structure within wizards for each wizard. So for example, VSD model number, and then I give it a version 01. And oops, doesn't like the hashes. Sorry, let's try that again. VSD, I don't know, D1200, I guess. And this will be version 10, or version 01 rather, sorry. So this then is where I would create that particular wizard for this thing, and I would version it. This makes it easier then to manage faceplates and other things that are tied to it. So under my templates, I could then go along, and then under my templates, I could then create a template that I know works with that particular faceplate, and I know that they are then tied together. It just makes it easier moving forward. So if I want to know what graphic forms relate to what wizards, it's quick and easy, a nice quick and easy reference. Then obviously if I go ahead and I add new functionality to that wizard, I will create a version 2 and a version 3, so that we can then allows us then to upgrade our process without interfering with current operations. Okay, so versioning is quite important, and this is some of the ways that I would then incorporate it into the structure itself. Again, guys, this is not a definitive example. You will obviously need to just take this example and then utilize it for yourselves. All right. Last thing that I like to do within here is I like to create one last folder in here, and this folder I typically call _temp. It's a temporary folder. So if we just refresh this project quickly, so I can just explain why I use an underscore within my thing. The underscore typically puts it right at the top. One of the reasons I do this, and this will go for anything that I create temporarily on my server. So if I'm trying to see if a particular example will work, or a particular functionality that I'm playing with will work, I will create it within this folder structure. And I know that anything within that folder structure can be deleted without any up or downstream consequences. I also use the same when creating temporary agents within my project. I always prefix any agent that I know is temporary with an underscore. Again, that puts it at the top of it lists it alphanumerically, and that puts it at the top of the list. So I know that it's quick and easy then just to go in and clean up my WGP file and my project folders quite easily. I know where everything is. All right, so what I thought we'd do now is I thought we'd just have a look at a project that's completed. Again, guys, I will be going into a bit more detail around navigation, etc. later on at my next session. But in this one here, you'll see this is a almost completed project here, this juice plant project. And you'll see inside here, my first one is temp. I'm going to just go in there, and all of these graphics I can go ahead and delete, because I know that there is nothing in here that I need to worry about for long term. So when I finally hand this over to my client, it's nice and clean, and anything that I don't want to work with or he doesn't need to worry about can be removed quite easily. Again, you'll see I've got my batching, bottling, and filtration areas within my plant. Under them, you'll see that I've got my wizards and my main area. Again, these are all the graphics that I've created for this particular project, for that particular area. And then under faceplate, again, these are the different versioned faceplates for my graphics. Bottling I haven't done. This is merely just the bottling. It's just an empty folder. The only thing I have in here is the overview screen, and that's just waiting for me to go in and start engineering on that particular area, and I know where I am and what I've done, and I can manage all of those files quite easily. One thing I didn't cover, but you'll see I have here, is a main folder as well. Guys, this main folder will contain all graphics that relate to the entire project. So these are graphics that can be opened up from a main navigation, if you will. These graphics are set for a specific size as well, which we'll go into next time. And then I've got a few other bits and pieces in here. One of them is the object model. I've created a folder for object model with my versioning inside there. Faceplates, guys, if you are interested in an object model session, please let us know. We're quite happy to cater for these things, for your requests, so just let us know. And then the last one here, you see I've got a last area, and this is my pump station area. Again, my pump stations will have faceplates, mains, and wizards. These actually use our GIS interface for this particular area of my plant. So I have a GIS overview. For those of you that were in Werner's session, I think it was 2 days ago, 2 days ago, I believe. He showed us how GIS works and how that functions within the project, and I've got that created in here. So that now is a GIS overview. And then lastly, I have my landing page, or landing as I refer to it. So this is the graphic that typically has my main navigation on it. I keep this outside so that I know that is the form that I load by default. That is the one that I hear, and that is what it's easy to find, and I know that everything starts from that particular graphic form, and from there I can then load different graphics, always coming back to the landing form, obviously, for that navigation. All right, that pretty much brings us to the end of this particular session. I hope you guys found it interesting. I hope you got some interesting ideas out of it. Again, guys, this is not a definitive way that you should definitely do your project. Each project should be structured uniquely. There are requirements that need to be fulfilled by our clients, and that should be taken into consideration when structuring these graphics. But remembering that these things are, useful for structuring our data. All right, so I'm going to hand this over to the comment section. If there are any questions or any comments, please sound off. So this just some more sort of info around this. It's these structures very much come in handy, particularly when you start dealing with large projects with multiple graphic forms, multiple interlinking components within the project. One of the things that the guys find frustrating is trying to look for something that should be there. If I go out to site with an engineer, I hand over a project to a client, and I've got to train the plant engineer to work with the product. If my project is structured correctly, it's very easy then for them to go in, and it saves a lot of hassle and a lot of frustration further on down the line regarding this. So yeah, I hope everybody found that informative. And again, please feel free to contact myself or any of our support engineers via our different channels. I don't see any questions coming through, so I think I'm going to wrap this up. I hope everybody again found this interesting. And yeah, thank you guys for signing in, and hopefully we'll see you shortly for our next section. This will be part 4, and then in that session I'll be chatting about creating navigation and chatting a little bit about navigation, some of the concepts around navigation. A lot of time I see guys, they make some very, very basic mistakes when creating their navigation. I'd like to clear some up, give you guys some pointers. Anyway, hopefully see you there. Thanks, guys. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe.